A struggling artist sells her creations to afford the chemotherapy that is ravaging her body, her hands trembling as she paints. But when a Black single father accidentally collides with her world, his subsequent actions give her a new reason to fight for her life. The sharp clatter of frames hitting the brick walkway shattered the humid Tuesday quiet of Rittenhouse Square. Clara Monroe stared in disbelief as her watercolors, the product of 6 agonizing weeks, scattered across the ground like a deck of discarded cards. Her knees buckled and met the hard surface, sending a jolt of pain through her already tender joints. But she hardly felt it. Her focus was entirely on the paintings, some of which were now marred by the shoe prints of passers-by who didn't bother to break their stride. "Oh no," she whispered, her voice a raw crackle as she reached for a vibrant painting of lemon trees, its canvas now gashed down the center. That piece was meant for Thursday's infusion. Another, a delicate rendering of sparrows in flight, was supposed to cover the cost of her anti-nausea medication. Each lost piece represented a specific, tangible need. "I am so sorry." A deep voice sliced through her rising panic. "I wasn't looking where I was going. Please, let me help you." Clara looked up into the concerned face of a handsome Black man in his late 30s, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. He was already on one knee, carefully gathering her scattered artwork with gentle hands. Behind him, her flimsy display easel lay on its side, the clear cause of the disaster. Yet it wasn't anger that washed over her, but a profound weariness. It was a bone-deep, soul-sapping exhaustion that made her want to simply sit on the warm bricks and surrender completely. "It's okay," she managed to say, though the violent tremor in her hands told a different story. "It was an accident." Marcus Vance paused as he noticed her hands, the way they shook not from the shock of the moment, but from something more systemic and deep-seated. Then his eyes caught the glint of a medical ID bracelet on her wrist. He observed the deliberate, careful way she moved, as if each gesture was a precious expenditure of energy. "These are extraordinary," he said, his voice soft, the slight labor in her breathing despite the minimal effort. "How much for this one?" he asked, indicating the kite painting. $50, she said automatically. Then, taking in his expensive watch and the fine cut of his suit, she quickly revised. "But I can do 40 if—" "I'll take 5 of them," he interrupted smoothly. $250. The offer hung in the air, thick and unbelievable. Clara's eyes widened, and for a fleeting second, Marcus thought she might refuse. A flicker of fierce pride crossed her features, battling with the raw, undeniable need. "You don't have to do that. I'm not being charitable," he insisted, though they both knew it was a gentle lie. "My daughter, she adores art. She's 9, and she lost her mom 3 years ago. Painting became her language when words failed her. These will mean the world to her." The mention of a motherless child seemed to soften something brittle inside of Clara. She understood loss. She understood how art could be a lifeline when you felt like you were drowning in an ocean of grief. "All right," she whispered, "but you should choose them. Each one should speak to you." As Marcus made his selections, the kite, a woman finding joy in a downpour, children catching fireflies in a jar, a stubborn tree growing through a crack in a city sidewalk, and 2 hands reaching for one another across a void, Clara carefully wrapped each piece in brown paper. Her movements were slow, measured, as if she were conserving her strength for a more significant battle. "I'm here most days, 10 to 5, she explained quietly, "unless it's a treatment day. Chemo is on Mondays and Thursdays. That makes Tuesday and Friday sales especially important." As she reached for a roll of tape in her tote bag, a folded piece of paper slipped out and fluttered to the ground. A medical bill. The number printed at the bottom made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. $52,000. Red "past due" stamps littered the page like angry accusations. "I should get going," Clara said quickly, snatching the bill and shoving it back into her bag, her face flushed with embarrassment. "My afternoon medication makes me dizzy if I don't take it with something to eat, and I've already missed my window." "When was the last time you ate?" The question was out of his mouth before Marcus pretended not to notice the effort each small bite required. The neatly wrapped paintings sat between them, a small, hopeful barrier that neither of them seemed keen to maintain. "Hodgkin's lymphoma," she said into the silence. "Stage 3. I was diagnosed 8 months ago, 3 weeks after I graduated from PAFA. It's a cosmic joke, isn't it? Spend 4 years preparing for a future that might not even be there." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's the truth," she replied, her voice devoid of self-pity, stating it as a simple fact. "The doctors give me a 50-50 chance if I can finish the full course of treatment, but that's a very big if. Each session is thousands of dollars. My insurance covers a fraction of it, but it's not enough. It's never enough." She spoke then of her parents, how they had died in a car accident on the Schuylkill Expressway when she was 16. She described using every last cent of her inheritance for art school, convinced she was investing in her future. She had been so ready to conquer the world, portfolio in hand, until the first sign appeared, a swollen lymph node in her neck that she had dismissed for far too long. "So now I paint," she continued, gesturing with her half-eaten sandwich toward her reassembled stand. $10 here, 30 there, sometimes 50 if I get really lucky. It's not enough, but it's something. It's a way of doing something." Marcus understood that desperate need to do something, anything, when life spiraled out of his grasp. After his wife Simone's diagnosis, he had obsessively reorganized their entire house, created color-coded spreadsheets for her medications, and built a complex support schedule that accounted for every single minute. None of it had been enough to save her, but the ceaseless activity had kept him from completely falling apart. "My daughter Zoe," he began, his voice softer now. "She started drawing right after her mom passed. For 3 months, she wouldn't speak a word. She just filled page after page with these vast, blue oceans. It was like she was trying to submerge her grief in pigment." "Did it work?" Clara asked. "Eventually. An art therapist explained to me that children often process trauma through creation, people with skin the color of rainbows." In a place of honor, nestled amongst her drawings, were the 5 paintings he had bought from Clara, already looking as if they had always belonged in Zoe's vibrant world. "Daddy?" Zoe's sleepy voice emerged from the darkness. "Why are you sad?" He hadn't even realized he was crying. "Not sad, sweet pea, just thinking. About Mommy, and about someone else who needs help." "Like Mommy needed help?" "Yeah," he choked out, "just like that." "Then we have to help them," Zoe said with the simple, unwavering logic of a child. "That's what people are supposed to do. They help each other." The next morning, after dropping Zoe off at her summer art program, Marcus drove straight back to Rittenhouse Square. Clara was there, just as he had known she would be. She sat on her small stool, already painting, her focus absolute despite the slight tremor that still plagued her hand. "Back so soon?" She looked up, her expression a mixture of surprise and something he couldn't quite name. "Don't tell me you need more art already." "Actually," he said, pulling a nearby folding chair closer to her setup, "I have a proposition for you." Clara's brush froze mid-stroke. She had heard that line before, usually from men who assumed her street-side stall and worn clothes meant she was selling more than just her art. They confused desperation with availability. Sensing the sudden shift in her demeanor, Marcus quickly elaborated. "My company is moving into a new office space. We have 30 empty walls in the lobby, the conference rooms, all the common areas. I showed your work to our design committee yesterday evening. They were blown away." "That's very generous, but..." "There's more," he continued, leaning forward. "We want to host an art exhibition in the new building's atrium, a showcase for emerging local artists. We'll invite all our clients, the press, make it a major event. We want you to be the featured artist." The hope that flared in her eyes was so bright it nearly took his breath away. Then, just as quickly, it was extinguished. "I can't," she said, setting her brush down with finality. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, really, But I don't need your pity. I don't need pushed everyone away. I thought that accepting help meant I was failing her. Our friends wanted to organize meal deliveries, fundraisers, support groups. I said no to all of it. I told myself we were fine, that we could handle it on our own. He paused, watching a tourist stop to admire one of Clara's paintings. Simone died on a Tuesday. It was just a normal, ordinary Tuesday. And do you know what she said to me that morning? She said she wished she could have seen our community rally around us. She wanted Zoe to remember people lifting us up, not just the crushing isolation of the illness. I stole that from her. I stole that from my daughter, the chance to see how powerful people can be when they come together. I don't even know you, Clara whispered, her defenses crumbling. No, he agreed, but you know what it's like to face something that's bigger than you. And I know what it's like to watch someone you love fight that battle. Maybe that's enough to start with. She was quiet for a long time, picking up her brush again and adding delicate, feathery strokes to a new painting. It was a girl, standing on the edge of a cliff, with intricate paper wings strapped to her back, poised to take a leap of faith. What if I can't finish enough work for the show? She asked, her voice barely audible. I mean, what if I get too sick? Then we'll display whatever you've been able to create, he answered without hesitation. Even if it's just one painting, even if it's unfinished, sometimes the most beautiful art is the art that's incomplete. Over the next 3 weeks, a new rhythm took hold on the corner of the square. Marcus became a familiar presence at Clara's stall. He would bring her lunch, claiming they were leftovers from a corporate meeting, and sit with her during the slow afternoon hours, tapping away on his laptop. They talked about everything and nothing. Zoe's latest artistic masterpiece from camp, Clara's fondest memories of art school, the subtle ways the light shifted and changed across the park throughout the day. You know, people are starting to gossip, Clara mentioned one afternoon, nodding toward a group of other vendors who were watching them with knowing glances. About what? About the handsome tech mogul who's falling for the tragic dying artist. What Zoe needs. You met her yesterday, remember? The memory brought an involuntary smile to Clara's face. Zoe had tumbled out of Marcus's car like a small, energetic whirlwind, immediately peppering Clara with questions about every single painting. She had sat cross-legged on the pavement for nearly an hour watching Clara work, her curiosity about color, technique, and inspiration seemingly endless. She's an extraordinary child, Clara said softly. She likes you. She asked if you could teach her how to paint clouds. Apparently, clouds are very tricky. They are, Clara agreed, a wistful look in her eyes. All that emptiness trying to become something solid. The metaphor hung in the air between them, unstated but deeply understood. If you have ever been fortunate enough to see kindness blossom into something far greater, you know that it rarely happens in a sudden burst. It builds slowly, imperceptibly, like a painting taking shape one careful brushstroke at a time. The preparations for the art show consumed the following 2 weeks. Marcus's colleagues, who were initially wary of dedicating company time and resources to an unknown street artist, became deeply invested as they learned more about Clara's story. Not the part about her cancer. Marcus honored her request to keep that private. But her immense talent, her unwavering dedication, and her powerful artistic vision. What had begun as a simple plan to hang some paintings evolved into a full-fledged event. The marketing department designed professional invitations and promotional materials. The facilities team worked with a lighting designer to transform the stark corporate lobby into a warm, inviting gallery space. Local news outlets even picked up on the story of a prominent tech firm championing a local artist, though they were oblivious to the real narrative unfolding in the quiet, unseen moments. Those moments included the time Clara had to leave the setup early for an unscheduled treatment, and Marcus held her hair back as she was sick in the parking garage afterward. Or the afternoon Zoe insisted on helping Clara choose a new headscarf, the two of them dissolving into laughter in the middle of a department store as they tried on increasingly outlandish styles. Or the night before the show, when Clara called Marcus at 2 a.m, her voice trembling loose on her diminished frame. The silk headscarf Zoe had picked out, a vibrant pattern of blues and golds, felt foreign against her sensitive scalp. A knock at her apartment door pulled her from her anxious preparations. When she opened it, she found Marcus and Zoe standing in the hallway, both dressed in their finest, holding a large flat box. "Special delivery," Zoe announced with great ceremony. "Daddy said you might need some extra courage, so I made you some." Inside the box lay a delicate, handmade tiara, fashioned from thin silver wire and adorned with silk flowers. On the petal of each flower, written in Zoe's careful, childish script, was a single word: brave, strong, artist, friend, hope. "For your throne," Zoe explained with solemn importance. "Queens need crowns." Clara's knees gave way and she sank to the floor, pulling the little girl into a fierce, desperate hug. Over Zoe's small shoulder, her eyes met Marcus's, and in them she saw a reflection of her own turbulent emotions, a tangled knot of love and fear so tightly wound they had become one and the same. "Thank you," she whispered, the words intended for the child, the father, and the universe all at once. By 7 o'clock that evening, the office building was unrecognizable. Soft, strategic lighting had transformed the cavernous, impersonal lobby into an intimate and sophisticated gallery. Clara's paintings adorned the walls, each one accompanied by a small placard on which she had written a few sentences about its inspiration. The painting of the boy with the kite held the place of honor, centered on the main wall under a professional spotlight. Guests began to arrive at 6:30, first in a trickle and then in a steady stream. There were Marcus's colleagues, his clients, and a surprising number of prominent Philadelphia art collectors he had somehow managed to persuade to attend. A local news crew had set up their camera in a discreet corner, preparing to film their human interest segment. But Clara barely registered any of it. All her energy was focused on breathing through the deep, aching pain that had taken root in her bones that morning and stubbornly refused to subside. "Are you okay?" Marcus materialized at her side, holding out a glass of water and 2 pain pills he had learned to always carry. Audience that the boy in the painting was based on her and her dreams. "They see you," Marcus said softly, his hand finding the small of her back. "Your vision, your heart, your fight. They see all of it." "Oh, ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." A woman in a chic, elegant suit stood near the main painting. "My name is Eleanor Vance, and I am the director of the Arch Street Gallery. I've been observing the reactions to this work tonight. Art is supposed to move us, to challenge us, to remind us of our own humanity. The work of Clara Monroe does all of this and more." The crowd grew quiet, all eyes turning toward the gallery director. "The Arch Street Gallery would like to formally offer Ms. Monroe a solo exhibition in our upcoming spring showcase. We believe her voice is one that Philadelphia needs to hear." The room erupted in applause, but Clara felt as if she were underwater. The words echoed in her mind. Spring showcase. Spring was 8 months away. They were offering her a future, assuming she would be alive to have one. Additionally, Eleanor continued over the applause, we would like to purchase 3 pieces tonight for the gallery's permanent collection. That announcement set off a chain reaction. Someone immediately started a bidding war for the storm painting. Another collector laid claim to 5 smaller pieces for her private collection. The news crew scrambled to interview Clara, who could barely string together a coherent sentence through her shock. But the most significant moment of the evening came when Marcus stepped up to the microphone that had been set up for speeches. 6 weeks ago, he began, his voice clear and steady despite the powerful emotions simmering beneath it. I literally stumbled into Clara's world when I knocked over her art stand. What I discovered that day was not just a collection of beautiful paintings, but an artist whose courage humbles me every single day." He paused, his eyes finding Clara in the crowd. She was sitting near the throne they had procured for her, a beautiful vintage armchair with Zoe's handmade crown resting slightly askew on her headscarf. "What many of you don't know," he continued, "is that Clara cover all of Clara's outstanding medical expenses in full." The number appeared on a large screen behind him. $83,000. "Furthermore, my company is officially commissioning Clara to create a permanent, large-scale installation for our headquarters, ensuring she has a stable income throughout her recovery." Clara's legs gave out. She sank into her throne, Zoe's crown tumbling to the floor as she covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook with deep, wrenching sobs that came from a place far deeper than simple gratitude. They were the sobs of a soldier who had just been told the war was over. Through her tears, she saw Marcus approaching, holding Zoe's hand. The crowd parted for them, creating a pathway that felt both miles long and instantaneous. When he reached her, Marcus knelt beside the chair and took her trembling hands into his own steady ones. "You did this," he said quietly, his words for her alone. "Your art, your spirit, your absolute refusal to give up. All we did was provide the stage." "I don't know how I can ever thank you," she whispered. "Don't," he replied. "Just paint. Just live. Just be." Zoe climbed into Clara's lap, retrieving the fallen crown from the floor and carefully placing it back on her head. "Better," the girl declared. "Queens shouldn't cry. Unless they're happy tears. Are these happy tears?" "The happiest," Clara managed, pulling both Zoe and Marcus into a tight embrace that conveyed everything her words could not. A photographer captured the moment, the artist who had been fighting for her life, the widowed father and the motherless child, forging a new family from the fragments of shared loss and unexpected love. The photograph would later win awards, be featured in magazines, and become an icon of hope. But in that instant, it was just three people holding on to each other in a room filled with art and infinite possibility. The months that followed were a blur, like watercolors bleeding into one another on a wet page. Clara's treatment regimen intensified, now made possible by the funds they had raised. Marcus drove her to every single appointment, with Zoe creating a new brightly colored "Get Well Soon" card for each one. The side effects grew worse before they got better. There were days when Clara couldn't even lift a paintbrush. Fateful collision in Rittenhouse Square. Clara stood before her newest painting, the undeniable centerpiece of the show. It depicted three figures, a man, a woman, and a young girl, flying kites in a field of wildflowers, their faces turned upward toward a sky brimming with possibility. "Is that us?" Zoe asked. She was 10 now and several inches taller, her own artistic talents flourishing under Clara's gentle mentorship. "What do you think?" Clara replied, running a hand through her own hair, which was now growing back in soft, dark waves. Her cheeks, once gaunt, were now full with the return of her health. "I think it's our family portrait," Zoe declared with certainty. "But you gave us all wings." "Hidden wings," Marcus corrected, wrapping an arm around each of them. "The kind you can only see when the light hits them just right." A reporter approached, asking Clara about her journey, about the overarching message in her work. "People always ask me if having cancer gave me a new perspective," she said thoughtfully. "But it wasn't the illness that changed me. It was discovering that when you are brave enough to let people help you, you don't just survive. You find new reasons to thrive." She glanced lovingly at Marcus and Zoe before turning back to the reporter. "I started out selling my art to fund my chemotherapy, just to buy myself a little more time. But what I found was so much more than time. I found proof that strangers can become your family, that love can bloom in the most barren ground, and that sometimes the very thing that breaks you open is what allows the light to finally get in." "And the kites?" the reporter asked, gesturing to the recurring motif throughout her work. "That's hope," Zoe answered before Clara could. "It's about launching your hope into the great unknown and trusting that it will find a safe place to land." As the gallery filled with admirers, collectors, and critics, all praising Clara's evolution as an artist, she stood quietly with her chosen family. Marcus's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the familiar ease of a gesture repeated 1,000 times. Zoe leaned against her side, already whispering ideas for their next collaborative painting. "Remember that first day, when I knocked over your entire display?" Marcus murmured, his voice low and full of warmth. "Best accident of my entire life." First painting Marcus had bought, the one of the boy launching his kite into the sunset. It was the same painting he had chosen on that sweltering Tuesday afternoon, when she was just trying to make it to the next day. "I was him," she said softly, "just launching all my desperate hope into an indifferent sky." "And now?" Marcus asked. "Now I know the secret," she said, turning to face him and Zoe, her eyes bright with a mixture of joyful tears and profound peace. "The kite doesn't have to land perfectly. It just has to land somewhere with people who are ready to help it fly again." 6 months later, the Philadelphia Inquirer ran a follow-up story with the headline, "Local artist Clara Monroe weds tech executive who saved her life." But they got it wrong, as newspapers so often do when it comes to matters of the heart. Marcus hadn't saved Clara's life. They had saved each other's. In a small, intimate ceremony surrounded by the vibrant arts community that had rallied around them, with Zoe as the flower girl wearing her own handmade crown. Clara and Marcus exchanged vows they had written themselves. Marcus promised to be her strength on the days when the canvas felt too heavy. Clara promised to always remind him that beauty and pain could coexist. They both promised Zoe that love was never about replacing what was lost, but about building something new and beautiful from the pieces that remained. The reception was held in the same corporate lobby where that first art show had changed the course of all their lives. But this time, the walls displayed a new collection, paintings that Clara and Zoe had created together, a vibrant chronicle of their blended family's journey. The centerpiece was a massive canvas showing 3 sets of hands releasing a single, colorful kite together, the sunset behind them not an ending, but a glorious new beginning. "You know what the best part is?" Zoe said during her toast, her wisdom far exceeding her 10 years. "Clara didn't just become my new mom. She became the person my first mom would have wanted for us. Someone who understands that the worst things that happen to you don't have to be the end of your story." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. As the evening wound down, Clara found herself standing in the same spot where she had stood on that first night, in front of her painting's chest. "That's how I knew you were dangerous. You looked at my art, and you saw me. The real me. Not the sick girl, not the charity case. Just me. Cassie. And you saw us," he added. "Not the grieving widower and his sad little girl, just 2 people who needed to remember that beauty still exists in the world." They stood together watching the Philadelphia skyline glitter through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere out there, on a different street corner, another struggling artist might be packing up their work for the night. Another single parent might be wrestling with how to help their child navigate an ocean of grief. Another person might be facing down odds that seemed utterly insurmountable. But Clara and Marcus knew something that those people didn't know yet. They knew that sometimes the universe conspires to create collisions that look like accidents but feel like answered prayers. That selling art on a street corner can lead to a gallery exhibition. That a widowed father buying a painting for his daughter can become the love of your life. That a little girl's need for a mother can help a dying woman find her reason to live. Cassie. The last thing anyone saw that night was Zoe, asleep in the back seat of the car, clutching a small new painting Clara had made just for her. It showed a young girl with paper wings, no longer poised on the edge of a cliff, but soaring high above the clouds, carried aloft by winds she had finally learned to trust. At the bottom, in Clara's careful script, were the words, "For Zoe, who taught me that families aren't just born, they're created, one brushstroke at a time. Back at the apartment that had become their home, 3 easels stood ready for the morning. 3 sets of paintbrushes waited in their jars. 3 hearts that had been shattered by loss had found their way back to one another, creating art from ashes, beauty from pain, and a love story that began with scattered paintings on a hot Philadelphia sidewalk, but would continue for all the years the universe decided to grant them. And in the end, isn't that what we are all doing? Painting our hopes onto blank canvases, launching our paper kites into uncertain skies,